Good morning. It is 7/24/21, and we're here reading about 10 minutes a day from the Anarchist Handbook, organized by Michael Malice. And today we are continuing with Chapter 16, Emma Goldman, from Anarchism and Other Essays, 1910. And we're starting about a third of the way down on page 225, so we'll get reading. The principle of brotherhood expounded by the agitator of Nazareth preserved the germ of life, of truth and justice, so long as it was the beacon light of the few. The moment the majority seized upon it, that great principle became a shibboleth and harbinger of blood and fire, spreading suffering and disaster. The attack on the omnipotence of Rome, led by the colossal figures of Huss, Calvin, and Luther, was like a sunrise amid the darkness of the night. But so soon as Luther and Calvin turned politicians and began catering to the small potentates, the nobility, and the mob spirit, they jeopardized the great possibilities of the Reformation. They won success and the majority, but that majority proved no less cruel and bloodthirsty in the persecution of thought and reason than was the Catholic monster. Woe to the heretics, to the minority, who would not bow to its dicta. After infinite zeal, endurance, and sacrifice, the human mind is at last free from the religious phantom. The minority has gone on in pursuit of new conquests, and the majority is lagging behind, handicapped by truth grown false with age. Politically, the human race should still be in the most absolute slavery. Were it not for the John Balls, the Watt Taylors, the Tells, the innumerable individual giants who fought inch by inch against the power of kings and tyrants. But for individual pioneers, the world would have never been shaken to its very roots by that tremendous wave, the French Revolution. Great events are usually preceded by apparently small things. Thus, the eloquence and fire of Camille Desmoulins was like the trumpet before Jericho, raising to the ground that emblem of torture, of abuse, of horror, the Bastille. Always, at every period, the few were the banner-bearers of a great idea, of liberating effort. Not so the mass, the leaden weight of which does not let it move. The truth of this is borne out in Russia with greater force than elsewhere. Thousands of lives have already been consumed by that bloody regime. Yet the monster on the throne is not appeased. How was such a thing possible when ideas, culture, literature, when the deepest and finest emotions groan under the iron yoke? The majority, that compact, immobile, drowsy mass, the Russian peasant, after a century of struggle, of sacrifice, of untold misery, still believes that the rope which strangles, quote, the man with the white hands brings luck. In the American struggle for liberty, the majority was no less of a stumbling block. Until this very day, the ideas of Jefferson, of Patrick Henry, of Thomas Paine are denied and sold by their posterity. The mass wants none of them. The greatness and courage worshipped in Lincoln have been forgotten in the men who created the background for the panorama of that time. The true patron saints of the black men were represented in that handful of fighters in Boston, Lloyd Garrison, Wendell Phillips, Thoreau, Margaret Fuller, and Theodore Parker, whose great courage and sturdiness culminated in that somber giant, John Brown. Their untiring zeal, their eloquence, and perseverance undermined the stronghold of the Southern lords. Lincoln and his minions followed only when abolition had become a practical issue, recognized as such by all. About 50 years ago, a meteor-like idea made its appearance in the social horizon of the world. An idea so far-reaching, so revolutionary, so all-embracing as to spread terror in the hearts of tyrants everywhere. On the other hand, that idea was a harbinger of joy, of cheer, of hope to the millions. The pioneers knew the difficulties in their way. They knew the opposition, the persecution, the hardships that would meet them. But proud and unafraid, they started on their march onward, ever onward. Now that idea has become a popular slogan. Almost everyone is a socialist today. The rich man, as well as his poor victim. The upholders of law and authority, as well as their unfortunate culprits. the free thinker as well as the perpetuator of religious falsehoods, the fashionable lady as well as the shirt-waist girl. Why not? Now that the truth of 50 years ago has become a lie, now that it has been clipped of all its youthful imagination and been robbed of its vigor, its strength, its revolutionary ideal, why not? Now that it is no longer a beautiful vision, but a, quote, practical workable scheme, resting on the will of the majority, why not? Political cunning ever sings the praise of the mass, the poor majority, the outraged, the abused, the giant majority, if only it would follow us. Who has not heard this litany before? Who does not know this never-varying refrain of all politicians? That the mass bleeds, that it is being robbed and exploited. I know as well as our vote baiters. But I insist that not the handful of parasites, but the mass itself is responsible for this horrible state of affairs. It clings to its masters, loves the whip, and is the first to cry, "Crucify!" The moment a protesting voice is raised against the sacredness of capitalistic authority or any other decayed institution. Yet how long would authority and private property exist if not for the willingness of the mass to become soldiers, policemen, jailers, and hangmen? The socialist demagogues know that as well as I, but they maintain the myth of the virtues of the majority, because their very scheme of life means the perpetuation of power. And how could the latter be acquired without numbers? Yes, authority, coercion, and dependence rest on the mass, but never freedom or the free unfoldment of the individual, never the birth of a free society. Not because I do not feel with the oppressed, the disinherited of the earth, not because I do not know the shame, the horror, the indignity of the lives the people lead, do I repudiate the majority as a creative force for good. Oh, no, but because I know so well that as a compact mass, it has never stood for justice or equality. It has suppressed the human voice, subdued the human spirit, chained the human body. As a mass, its aim has always been to make life uniform, gray, and monotonous as the desert. As a mass, it will always be the annihilator of individuality, of free initiative, of originality. I therefore believe with Emerson that, quote, the masses are crude, lame, pernicious in their demands and influence, and need not to be flattered, but to be schooled. I wish not to concede anything to them, but to drill, divide, and break them up, and draw individuals out of them. Masses, the calamity are the masses. I do not wish any mass at all, but honest men only, lovely, sweet, and accomplished women only. End quote. In other words, the living, vital truth of social and economic well-being will become a reality only through the zeal, courage, the non-compromising determination of intelligent minorities, and not through the mass. And that is the end of Chapter 16, Emma Goldman. We've got a little bit of time, so we're going to go ahead and start on Chapter 17 on page 229. And this is Charles Robert Plunkett from the essay Dynamite, with an exclamation, from 1914. And here's Michael Malice's introduction. Emma Goldman's anarchist periodical, Mother Earth, was a clearinghouse for many prominent names in leftist circles. In 1914, one issue was released without her supervision while she had been away on a lecture tour. Though Goldman was more bloodthirsty than her mentor, Johann Most, or her partner, Alexander Berkman, even he thought the McKinley assassination was pointless and a shame. She still knew enough to be careful as to where and when to discuss political violence. As Goldman later wrote, quote, I had tried always to keep our magazine free from such language, and now the whole number was filled with prattle about force and dynamite. I was so furious that I wanted the entire issue thrown into the fire, but it was too late. The magazine had gone out to the subscribers. Here is the anarchist essay that so disquieted even Emma Goldman. And we'll just stop right there and start that tomorrow. So that's a very intriguing introduction to Charles Robert Plunkett. And we'll wrap that up today. About 10 minutes a day reading the Anarchist Handbook, organized by Michael Malice, and we'll see you back soon.